Let's see,
Okay,
maybe.
good.
Got it. Yay.
Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I'm invited and have invited a new guest today to talk about something I've already talked about, but I want to get a second opinion. Debz Shakti is visiting with me today, and she was at this seance that I found very interesting. For a little bit of background for people who really don't know, my assistant, Desta Barnaby, started to get into the whole seance thing, the physical mediums. And I've always known physical mediums are very important because they're able to produce material. And it's sort of like stuff coming in from wherever it's coming in from into the physical world and then going back again or disappearing. And it's called Apports and Manifestations. I wrote a book called Weird, the Paranormal World of Apports and Manifestations. And Desta told me about a physical medium that we're going to be talking about today. And this is about a month ago. And I think at that time he produced out of his mouth 1,800 objects. And she filmed this whole thing. And then I was talking to, I found out that Wendy Gallant had gone to the same guy at a different event, and that there had been a similar type of thing happening. And even though when you post this kind of stuff, it's really, I think we're still a few funerals away from people understanding what's going on here. This is extremely important when you've got material coming into the world and going out of the world. So Debz was at this event that happened, I think last weekend. Was it last weekend? Or
Two
week ago?
weekends ago.
2 weekends ago in Wisconsin. And so I interviewed Wendy Gallant, and it's on her site. I'll maybe provide a link for that. And now I heard that Debz was there. So I said, well, let's have a second opinion on what she thought was going on. And now I hear she was one of the facilitators. So welcome, Debz, and thank you for joining me with this, what I think is extremely important. In fact, I'm actually moving more away from the UFO material now to this. I think this is got a lot of potential. And in fact, I've actually given an instruction to Desta's partner, Matt the Pond guy, because he was a little skeptical when he went in. He wasn't so skeptical when he came out, but
Right.
I said to him, we need to do an experiment here, because when I heard that these 1,800 objects had come out of this Mychael's mouth, the first question I asked Desta is, Desta, were they dry? And she said, yeah, they were dry. I said, this is a real deal.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be pretty hard. I've had my $1,000 challenge to people. Anybody who thinks they can do this, $1,000, put it on the table. I'll put up my $1,000. We'll have an independent, and if you can do it, you get the $1,000 guaranteed. There's nobody can be able to
Nope.
get 1,800 objects come out of their mouth without any saliva or stomach juice on them or whatever. And so I told Matt, you need I think you need the permission of whoever's on the other side, the spirit or whatever the intelligence. You need to. But apparently we've gotten the permission from Mychael to do this kind of stuff. And what we want to do is we want to capture one of these things as it's coming out and into a like a urine sample jar with nobody touching it, and then have a bunch of people sign it and seal it, and then have it actually tested to see if there's any saliva on it. And if it's completely dry, then we've got some evidence. And the other thing that well, there's a couple other experiments, but we'll maybe talk about that later. But let's start by you telling me how this event took place. I even told Wendy, I said, man, if this happens next year and this guy's there, Wisconsin is not that far away from me. It's maybe a 10-hour drive or whatever.
Yeah.
I would love to have been there. And I heard you actually had somebody from Winnipeg there. So
yeah, we
so
had some Winnipeggers there. So
yeah, so I'm fascinated to see this. I'm going. I think he's in Toronto in November. I'm going there, and I've proposed a bunch of different experiments to look at this, because I think this is critically important in terms of understanding how does reality work. What's really going on here in terms of what is the intelligence? Why is this stuff happening? So let's start from the beginning and tell me how you set this up and how you found out about Mychael Shane, I think is his name.
Yes. Well, Melissa Kane is the owner of McGrath's Big Arb Resort up in northern Wisconsin.
Okay.
It's very northern Wisconsin. It's way up in the big North Woods, very remote, gorgeous place. She used to go there as a kid, and as she got to be an adult, it came for sale, and she didn't want to see it. It had kind of gotten run down through different owners and stuff as she grew up. She couldn't stand to see it, you know, become dilapidated, and so many memories were there. So she and her husband pulled their money and bought the resort at the time that was there, and they refurbished it. It's one of the nicest resorts I've ever been to, and for the last 5 years, it was Melissa's idea, I think 5 or 6 years ago, to invite another of our mutual friend, Kimberly Porth. Kimberly, to come and lead a CE5 group, because Melissa got really turned on to CE5 contact, and she had worked at Star Wars with Paula Harris and had gotten really involved a few years back, and she thought, gosh, I have the perfect place where we can host and have people come and practice and all that. So CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or Human Initiated ET Contact. So that first year, Kimberly said, yes, but I need a team. So she put a team of us together, because it takes a lot to run one of these things.
Yeah.
And I was on her team. Several other people from the contact community were on her team. And so for the last few years, it has been really mostly about going out doing sky watches, training to do different spiritual practices, to raise our vibrational states, bring heart coherence, which it also helps us make contact with non-local consciousness. Over the years, all three of us, Melissa, myself, and Kimberly, have become very convinced, just like you have, I'm sure, all of this is just consciousness. It's just different forms of consciousness. And just focusing on one piece is limiting and can sometimes really lead to misinterpretations and so forth. So we started inserting more things, more yogic practices, my quantum hypnosis practices when I do it with groups, all the stuff to be able to get to these different forms. So last year after ours, Melissa and I were talking, and I said, why don't we just kind of have an all access pass kind of thing where we bring about all kinds of consciousness? And she thought it was a great idea. And unbeknownst to me, well, I think I knew, because we're best friends, but she had been taking a physical mediumship course, and still is, through Mychael Shane. Okay. So she was on fire about this. She's like, you need to watch these videos. This guy is, I can't explain it. It's got to be, she's like, you look at it and tell me what you think. I'm like, that's some pretty fringe stuff there. And it takes a lot to blow my mind, but the stuff that was happening with him, apporting big jewels out of his mouth and everything after his mouth had been taped up, and it was just crazy. So anyway, she said, I think I want that to be one of our contact modalities next year for our all access pass. I'm like, cool, let's see. All I have to do is just try. Maybe he'll say no way. But anyway, for the past several years, he has been working with his top student, Julie Adreani. And they do these seances together a lot now, whereas he brings them through physically through his body, his mouth, his stomach, his whatever, jewels, oils, objects. She never did want to have her apports come that way. So she made a deal with the people on the other side. They'll manifest either through the air or, outside of my body, in the recesses of where the audience is, okay, or in specific places, which is very interesting. We'll get to that. So the two together have this amazing synergy. They're both beautiful, just divinely loving people. Very, how shall I put it? Very humble, but you can tell now they have some power. So anyway, Melissa invited them and they said yes. So we got really excited. We're like, okay, we've got all these other aspects of making contact with non-local consciousness. And now we also have a seance. Now I'm going to say I've been to seances before. I'm a child of the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. So back in the 70s or late 60s, I went to some seances and there was some cool stuff that happened, but almost every one of them I could point my finger and go, well, that part was faked. That was for the, as you like to put it, the wow factor for the audience. That could be faked. The stuff that I witnessed at this seance, my mind is still blown, just like Wendy's was. I mean, these people didn't know any of us. They didn't know anything about us. They didn't even have our names. We randomly were given numbers so that when Mychael was channeling or was speaking for a being called Lady Nada, which is a kind of a nickname for Mary Magdalene, the Mary Magdalene energy, okay? She chose the name Lady Nada, Nada, because it means nothing. She's so evolved now that she is just pure energy and she has no ego, but she does have a fierce sense of humor, I have to say.
Wow.
But anyway, that's the main person who comes through. He also channeled Saint Germain, which I thought was interesting. But anyway, Lady Nada through this seance would call a number, and that person who, ahead of time, they didn't know who these people were. The person would ask a question and she would give a very elaborate and precise answer or advice. And it was,
would they read out the number, or she just gets the number and then tells you what the answer is?
no, she would call through Michael's vocal cords, I guess. Well, I don't even know if it's through his vocal cords, because he had, and Wendy described this, there are a lot of these fixes that they do to prove that it's not coming from the person. Restrain the arms with cable ties, and people have to sign off on this. And people from the audience did this.
Yeah.
And we were there when they were setting up. From the moment they came on the property to the time of the end of the seance, at least one of us, the facilitators, were with them at all times. We know the building forward and back. There's no way some of this stuff could have happened without us knowing that someone else was helping. So anyway, they restrained their arms in their chairs. They're sitting in what's known as the cabinet. It's a kind of a PCP pipe frame, and then with velvet curtains. So anyway, he's sitting there restrained. He had taken water into his mouth from a cup, and then he put it in his mouth, and before he did, they marked on the cup how high up the water was.
Yeah.
He didn't swallow it. They taped over his face, which he has a beard and a mustache, but he said, I don't care because I don't feel it. Pressed it to where you couldn't feel any air coming out. And then that person signed the tape.
Okay.
What else? There were just a lot of fixes to make sure he couldn't get out or couldn't speak or couldn't do anything without people finding out. So as the seance started progressing, and they speak through something called a trumpet. It just looks like a big silver megaphone. And they have some little fluorescent dots on the objects that they bring so that you can see, because it's in the dark. You can see them when they start to fly around the room and stuff. It's really crazy. So anyway, we were all invited to raise our energy by way of some chants, some prayers, some songs. We all sang together in the dark. Everybody got really cool, heart coherence, because that was the main theme of this thing that we put on. Everybody is just, super excited. And suddenly you hear all this banging and stuff coming from Michael's cabinet. Their cabinets are side by side. Julie's was restrained and so forth, exactly the same way. But we heard all this bumping around and everything. And suddenly this female voice comes out and introduces herself as Lady Nada. And she'd say, all right, number 6, what's your question? First, she gave a message, and it was a beautiful message about humanity and creation and things like that, about us pulling together and helping the world. Then she's like, okay, so number 6, what's your question? And the person who had number 6 would ask a question, and she would just spew forth all of this wisdom and very specific things about their lives sometime, including me. It was mind blowing. So that was cool enough. But then, as Wendy spoke about, when Wendy's number was called, and I'm the only person who was there out of the 28 participants and the helpers with Mychael and Julie, I think altogether we were 32 people. When it was Wendy's turn, they said, bring her up here for a healing. Now, I'm the only person at Big Arb at the event who knew that Wendy's husband had passed away not long ago.
Mhm.
And I had never told anybody because that was a confidential thing she told me. And she's heartbroken over it. And I, I don't know if you want me to go through her thing, but literally.
Yeah, from your perspective, because
Right,
she
okay,
told the
so
story, but from your perspective,
right,
because
so
she felt sorry for you, you know that she felt sorry for you, that you were hurting, and
oh,
she sort of figured like, why didn't they take Debz? Why are they taking me? She was kind of confused. So give it from your perspective
okay.
in terms of.
Well, for a little background for the audience who doesn't know me or doesn't know that this happened, because I wasn't real vocal about it till really recently, is I literally, after a lifetime of heavy athletics, wore some parts out and had to have a hip replacement not long
Yeah,
ago,
yeah,
which just again blew my mind. I never thought I'd ever say those words, but it's a really brutal thing to have to go through, and it's a very long recovery. And going to Big Arb was the very first thing I did when they cleared me to leave my house, you know.
wow,
And so it was probably a little too much to do the
yeah,
first thing, but I
yeah,
did it because I was looking forward to it for the whole year. But I was in a terrible, a lot of pain. And even my own hypnosis, meditation, all that, it wasn't keeping it under control. But I was so excited by this. I literally didn't feel anything during the seance. I
yeah.
didn't. So I didn't need the healing during the seance,
Did
but
you know that
they
he
called for
healed, or
her.
did you know that he was just a physical medium? What did you know about him before you went in?
I
Because
didn't know very much other than
yeah,
that what Melissa had told me because she's his student and she's told me for several months this guy is amazing. Um, the amount of apports and the quality of them and the meaning
yeah,
of them is just unreal. And the same with Julie. It's just that it doesn't come out of Julie's mouth. It rains out of the sky,
mhm,
or it just appears. It's just crazy. So they both work a little differently, but they work with the same energy. So, but Melissa had told me, she's like, be prepared because it's wild what he can do. And he has a lot of divine healing energy. They both do. They both work with angels and things like that too. So I just went as an empty cup. I just wanted to experience,
yeah,
I didn't want to even go and look up a bunch of stuff. I've seen a couple of videos of them and him, but what I witnessed was they brought Wendy up. They used a red light, and there are a lot of things that you have to be careful of because I guess if there's a lot of light in the room or even shiny like jewelry or something, it can harm the medium while they're
yeah,
in trance because they're enfolded in ectoplasm,
yeah.
which was another mind-boggling thing for me. I've witnessed ectoplasm a lot, but I have never seen it work the way it did here. So anyway, they bring her up in front of Michael's cabinet because that's who was channeling Lady Nada at the time. And Wendy, it was dark, but I have really good night vision, and I could see, and plus I'm using my psychic sight too, so I had a one up on a lot of people. I could literally see the ectoplasm just foiling out of his cabinet and out of Julie's cabinet, but his was just huge. And then suddenly there's these two hands and arms, but they're kind of filmy, smoky, diaphanous,
Mhm.
reach through the curtains. And I didn't hear it, but it said, uh, I think she said it told her it loved her, and it
Yeah,
was a male voice,
yeah,
sounded like her husband.
yeah,
But these hands came out and said, turn around. And she turned around, and I think one of the hands went up here and one went on her low back because she had low back problems. Now, even I didn't know about that. And something I didn't know about was she was born with a
yeah,
congenital heart problem.
yeah,
So first it was doing the healing, I imagine on the low back and up here, and then to the heart. and then turned her back around, and the hands were like on her face, but it was just like, it's like smoke hands. It was the weirdest thing doing this. And then now I didn't see a face come through, but I could tell because she moved in and someone kissed her, like her husband used to kiss her, and said, whispered in her ear, "I love you."
Mhm.
Wow. I mean, and she's in tears, and then, they led her back to her seat after she interacted a little bit more, but I was so mind blown. I was just like, everything just stopped. So, as if that wasn't crazy enough, right before the seance, I had two different conversations. One with Kimberly. We were sharing a room in our cabin. And about 10 minutes before we went to what we call our ceremony space, where we hold all these things,
Yeah.
We were talking about next year already. What do we want to
Okay.
do next year with this? And we were talking about doing other retreats, maybe elsewhere too, just making it bigger, just offering it where other people can get to it and so forth. And I was like, well, if you could, where would you want to do something? Where would you want to go? And I remember she said something about it'd be nice to go to the desert. It'd be nice to go to another country. And I said, I've always wanted to go to Peru. And she's like, oh yeah, that's cool. So it was just, no one heard it. We were the only two people in the house. So there was that one conversation. And a little before that, I'd had talked to another friend of ours, participant, Stacy McCardle, who had been saying, I'm having all these experiences and I feel like I'm going crazy. And it basically, she was describing gnomes around her house. Gnomes, like,
Okay. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I know Stacy. Yeah.
and she's like, that sounds so crazy. I'm afraid to tell anybody. What do you think? And I'm like, Stacy, you're so psychic. Of course, you're meeting with other kinds of consciousness, and they're manifesting as these little gnomes because you live out in the woods. And
Yeah.
why wouldn't you? So when it came time for Stacy's number to be called, and she was sitting two people away from me, I think, we're in a kind of a half circle. The cabinets are here. There's a table here with some musical instruments and a big glass bowl and so forth in front of us. Stacy's over here, a couple of people away from me, and she said, what's my purpose? Or so, I can't remember what her question was, but Lady Nada immediately started saying, you're to be working with the little people. They're trying to get your attention. They're all around your home. You start there, and then you start to work with them and move outward and help people with what they're trying to teach you. And there was a lot more, but the minute she said it, I looked at Stacy, she looked at me, and she's like, what the F? I'm like, now how? And no one heard our conversation.
Yeah.
So it was so particular. It blew my mind. And so it just kept blowing my mind. They just kept bringing up things about people that no one else knew. So it gets to Kimberly. Kimberly's, I think, the last one, all the way over on the other side of the room. And Lady Nada said, you're doing great work. You should continue to do it. You need to expand it, and you need to do it elsewhere as well. Be brave, or something like that. And Kimberly said, okay, well, what do you have advice about where I should do it? And Nada said, that desert way south of you with the big bird. And I instantly got a picture of the Nazca plane, the Atacama bird. And Kimberly said, I don't follow. What are you talking about? And she said, that desert in South America, way up in the high desert, there is a figure of a giant bird carved into the rock. And then she finally got it. She's like, oh. And I said, Kimberly, Peru, Nazca plane. And she's like, oh my God. And so they started giving her advice about what to do there. It was just, again, no one had heard that conversation. So there were many things that happened.
What about your
But-
question?
My question, I was just like flummoxed because everybody had asked my question. I just said, how may I best serve the world and the cosmos? And they just said, keep doing what you're doing. However, you're going to be given a special tool to help you go to the next level. And I'm like, okay, well that was pretty general, but cool, right? Before the seance started, though, when they were introducing themselves, Julie said that she and Mychael had begun working with the Ashtar Command, and that they were now working with star beings as well, which was cool because we had people who were like, came to us because we're putting these two things together. Nobody's ever done it before. ET contact, UFOs, and physical mediumship.
Right.
So I can't remember if it was Julie or Mychael who originally said we've been working with the Ashtar Command and the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and Julie said this big glass bowl that's sitting on the table here, I was instructed very firmly to buy this specific bowl, put it on a wooden stand, put it on this table, and that the Ashtar Commander was going to have me apport special tools into this bowl tonight for specific people.
So Julie said this?
Julie said this.
Okay.
Mychael affirmed that they've been getting lots of contact with the Ashtar Command. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, that way to tie it together, guys. That's awesome. So in the middle of this seance, there's all kinds of things happening. This is before the questions started. Manifestations. The trumpets came flying out of the cabinets, and they're flying around the room. You can see that because they had little fluorescent glow-in-the-dark dots on the edges of it, so you could see them. There were ping pong balls that just flew off the table. Most of them went towards Wendy. She was sitting directly across the room from them, and they were glow-in-the-dark ping pong balls. And just as they almost reached her feet, suddenly they just went whoosh, and went right back to the table.
Wow.
Freaked me out. And I'm like, that was really good. Keep bringing it. That's so good. And everybody's like, whoa, you're not supposed to clap, but people couldn't help it. But what else? Oh, and so there's a lot of music that they play to keep the vibrational state high. And this is what we teach at our retreats too, is how you bring your frequency up.
Raise the vibration,
so you can be resonant with these higher level beings. So one of the songs, and Wendy spoke about this in hers, you'll hear me kind of duplicate a lot of her things. One of the big songs was I've Got a Feeling Tonight's Gonna Be a Good Night by the Black Eyed Peas. Now, we had just finished singing yogic mantras, and I think we had said a Christian prayer, and there was, maybe even a hymn that everybody sang together. Then this song comes on, and the whole room just goes crazy because it's been a popular song for a while, and it's a fun dance song. What I didn't know, that no one knew, was that was the song Wendy played over and over and over again after her husband passed away to keep her from feeling bad. So this song comes on, and there is one of the little instruments they had on the table outside of the cabinets. They said, we've got a new one today. They had a little singing bowl. They had my buffalo drum. They said Ashtar Command or somebody wanted my buffalo drum, so it was there. Some maracas, I think, but there was a little xylophone, just about this size, and there was some little glow-in-the-dark dots on it, so you could see it in the dark. And the striker, the thing that you pound the xylophone with, the head was glow-in-the-dark. Wow. So it's just sitting there. It looks like a child's toy. The song comes on, everybody's singing at the top of their lungs. Suddenly, this thing gets pounded on by the striker. Like, how a little kid will go up to a little toy xylophone and like, like that. Yeah. And everybody's like, whoa, because it was very evident there was no hand playing that thing. It rises up off the table, and it's suddenly becomes at least playing in time with the music, and then it started playing the song, note for note, with the song. Really hard to do on a little child xylophone.
Yeah.
Again, mind blowing. Um, Crazy, crazy stuff. You know, at one point my drum got played, the singing bowl got played. I can't even remember all of it. I wish I could because it was just so much happening at once.
Tell the story that about the glass bowl. What happened? Did you
Okay,
see the object that went over the glass bowl or the?
that was the coolest thing of all. So in the beginning, Julie had said, you know, the Ashtar command had commanded or had mandated that she buy a specific size bowl, glass, good crystal bowl. Okay.
Mhm.
And put it in a specific place, and that they were going to place the tools that were to be given out to 4 people in that bowl, and then some for her and Mychael. So all the stuff's happening, and at the pitch of everybody's heightened emotions, suddenly all these, I can't, at first it felt like there was just hail raining down out of the sky. And it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, we found out later, little faceted jewels just everywhere. And sometimes at one point I felt and could psychically see there's like a, this building is a converted like pole barn garage type building, so very high ceilings. At one point there was like an 8 to 10 foot tall being standing right in front of me.
Wow.
And my friend who was sitting next to me, John, we both felt the temperature drop dramatically when I sensed that being. And just as I was about to say, there's somebody here, it's almost like somebody with a fire hose shot these jewels at me in my face. They were in my hair, they were in my ears, fell down my clothes, and you're not allowed to touch them. You don't touch them, and you don't reach out to touch if you feel a being there. But I had on, I was barefoot, and I was sitting in a chair, and I felt the edge, the hem of a velvet robe on my feet when that being was there, and it moved. But then it went like this, and all these things came at me, and and then it was gone. It was just like not there. It was there, then it was not there. So everybody's like, oh, you know, this stuff's falling from the sky. And again, mind you, one of us or all of us who were facilitating were in that building the whole time we were there. Nobody had a chance to set up anything funky. We watched them put the cabinets together. Mychael has 2 helpers, Sammy and Wendy, another Wendy, to help him, because when he's in the energy, when they finally do bring him out of the cabinet and untape his mouth and the apports come out eventually, he's still not all there. He's in a trance, and often, and he's a big guy, so they hold him up and he just stands there and spews the stuff out. But and Julie's husband, John, was there. So there's the cabinets, there's the table. Next to Mychael's cabinet, there's Sam and Wendy, his helpers, and then starting with Kimberly, the half circle of participants, until it gets to Julie's husband, John, sitting next to her cabinet. At no time did those people ever get up out of their chairs, except for when John used the red light to go get Wendy and bring her up, and used the red light to change the songs on the radio at his feet. And he didn't really just get up, he just kind of leaned over. We could see them. They didn't get up. So that strikes out, oh, well, that's why those people are here. They're putting on black cloaks and, you know.
Yeah.
So at the height of all this jewels are falling everywhere out of the sky. Suddenly, now this is my take. There are several people who saw this, and they have slightly different takes. So we're all in slightly different frequencies, so we perceive differently. I can totally explain that. At some point when we were at the height of this energy, I look up and the ceiling opens up. And there is a bright, glowing kind of white, gold, misty light. And there is a craft. It's a little craft is close. It's like right over the ceiling, and then it might have even come down under the ceiling. And for me, it looked kind of like a traditional, flying saucer from the 50s that you think of. Only for me, it was transparent. It was crystal, beautiful, but small with some lights. And out of it popped one of these. I don't know if you can see
Oh,
this.
these, I want to see this. Yeah, this is these objects.
That's the object. Let's see if I've got something here that is more helpful. Can you see that better?
There, yeah.
It's
Okay.
iridescent. It's multifaceted. It's really beautiful, actually.
Okay.
Hard to see in this light. But this first one comes from way up high and lands in the bowl, a glass bowl now.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, my dog's here, the
That's okay.
postal person. And that was wild enough. And then clunk, clunk, a couple more. And then suddenly just a whole bunch just came out of the sky. All of them landed in that glass bowl. Nothing broke.
Mm-hmm.
And then the light kind of diffused and then went like this. This is my version. Out like this, then up, ceiling closes, it's all done.
Wow.
So after, then some more stuff happened, more like Saint Germain came through, totally different voice. I don't believe Julie ever physically verbalized anything through her person. She's more the person who holds the energy and just draws it all in, and all of these apports come out from nowhere. This is crazy. Mm-hmm. So after all that, they turned on the lights, and that's when they said you can get your phones. We all had to leave our phones, our jewelry, everything outside. I was hurting again by that time, so I didn't want to get up. But Wendy got her phone, several other people got their phones, and they filmed them opening Michael's and Julie's cabinets. Michael came out, they had to take off, and they were all still on the marks. Mm-hmm. The tape was still here. They took the tape off. He spit the water back into the cup, and it was exactly at the line that they made on the cup. Mm-hmm. And then he said, I think this is when it happened. He said, "Where's my watermelon? I need my watermelon." And so they gave him some slices of watermelon to eat, because he said a lot of people who are debunkers say, these physical mediums are regurgitating this stuff, or they're holding it in their cheeks or whatever.
Yeah.
So it would be very obvious if they were bringing it up out of their, which sounds insane to me, to bring up hard, faceted, sharp objects out of your intestines. But anyway, you would have some of that food come back up.
Yeah. He did explain that, because when I heard it, I understood why he was doing this. Wendy didn't explain it, but in the one that Desta saw, he ate an entire pizza before the thing began.
Yeah, he had a steak.
That's the whole thing. So if you got the $1,000 challenge, and you think you can put them in your stomach,
you have to eat.
There better not be any pizza in the with the apports in the cup. And that's that's why he does it. It's almost like a jab at the skeptics.
It is. Oh no, it is, and I love it, because it's just kind of undeniable. But that is funny, because he said normally he would eat something light for dinner before one of these, but they were at a supper club and steak sounded good, so he had like a full steak dinner right before.
He's a big guy.
He's a big guy. Although with the energy, he's lost like 90 pounds in the last few months. He's coming down. Yeah. Wow. So anyway, if you're puking up jewels out of your body and you just had a steak dinner, you better believe there's going to be some pieces of meat in there. Nothing. But he came out, and he's just, you can tell he's still not physically here. They're holding him up, but he did say, bring the cloth. And they have a special kind of a sanctified cloth that they hold underneath him. And he said, now for those of you who have a weak stomach, maybe don't watch, don't listen, because sometimes my jaws unhinge. They literally crack open to get some of this bigger stuff out. And I could hear it crack. His jaw went like on a horror movie, like, like this. And, a few jewels came out into the cloth, completely dry now. You can tell they're dry. There's no drool coming out of his mouth. Then bigger stones came. I mean, and just when I thought it would be over, and he'd take a sigh, and he'd just kind of stand there, kind of, it's still in trance, and then he'd go like this and kind of shake and kind of open his mouth a little bit, and then more stuff would just come out of him. And there was like almost 200 joules came out of his body just in that one sitting.
Yeah.
And then I think we counted over 1,800 of the small jewels that apported all over the room from the ceiling. And then I think there were 24 of the ashtar jewels. Now I got a really small one. Some of them were big and bright. Well, they're all very bright and fiery, but the ashtar ones weren't given out till at the end. Nobody knew who was going to get them. But there was one guy who was given one who Nada said, or maybe it was Saint Germain, said is the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
And then and this guy literally is working on and has his passion is developing a 0-point energy device, free energy device. Now they didn't know that about him, but he got one of the jewels. And then I can't remember who got the other one. I know one was given to Melissa in gratitude for hosting the thing. It was really beautiful, almost looked like a big diamond. And then I was given mine, and I said, what is it? What am I supposed to do with it? And she said, it'll be revealed to you as you meditate with it and everything. It's and those of you who get these jewels are going to start working together.
Oh.
So there were 3, and I didn't think about it, and there was a lot going on, and a lot of counting of all, and sweeping up of all these little jewels on the floor. The next day before they left, Julie came and got Kimberly and said, I am so sorry, but they were after me all night long because I forgot to give you the final jewel. You're the one who has the other jewel. So Kimberly has one. I have one. This other guy has one. I can't remember who has the other one, but then Melissa was given one too. It's probably for bringing us together. But the jewels that Mychael apported out of his mouth in front of us, they put them all out on his table on this cloth, and one by one he would have us go up, and he would give at least 2 jewels to each person and tell them what they were for and what the meaning was and why they were being given. For me, I got a faceted raw emerald, just a little one, and a faceted, beautiful labradorite stone, which labradorite is like my favorite stone of all time.
Oh, wow.
The emerald, he said, came from Buddha because my Buddha nature, which I don't know, but it's a compliment, but thank you. I don't feel so Buddha-like most of the time. But this one, the labradorite one, he said, comes from Krishna, Lord Krishna. I've been a yogi my whole life. I've been interested in Krishna, but I have never like channeled Krishna or, I've chanted a lot to Krishna. But he said, he's one of your master teachers and he's going to start coming through. So be ready because it's going to be big. Wow. So I'm like, cool. Thank you so much. They were just wonderful gifts. And then I started to walk away and he pulled me back and he said, and I have to be careful here because I don't like to bring my family into these conversations in public because my family is very private.
Yeah.
But he said, I have something here for your granddaughter. And now I am not public on the internet anymore about my family. There's nothing out there. I've scrubbed as much as I could just to keep so that they can have their lives private from mine. But there's nothing that somebody could look up to see that I have grandchildren or who my children are or anything really.
Oh, you're only 40 years old. How could you have grandchildren?
I love you so much, Grant. Bless you.
You are very young looking.
Thank you. I'm old enough to be your mother probably. But anyway, but what he didn't know was I have something going on in my family that that is very close to my heart. And
Mhm.
so it pinged my heart a lot just to hear him say, I have something for your granddaughter.
Wow.
And then he said, take your hand and wave it over the jewels, and I'll tell you when to stop. And then you put your middle finger down, and that'll be the jewel. So I did, and he said, okay, stop. My middle finger literally went down and touched this jewel, and it's her birthstone.
Wow.
And then he said, I know there's a lot. It's a very complicated thing, but at some point you'll be able to give this to her, and it will become the bridge for your family to become very harmonious.
Wow.
And he
There you
said,
go.
so be sure to give this to, and then he said her name.
Wow. That must have been shocking. Yeah.
I don't think even my best friends, Melissa, Stacy, and Kimberly there know my granddaughter's name.
Wow.
I just about fell out of my spacesuit. That did it for me. I'm like, okay, dude, I do not know how you know these things, but I am on board 1000% with you guys.
Yeah.
But there's so much love and caring and kindness in these sessions. There's healing, there's sweetness, but there's also a lot of joy. And and I've heard you say he gives a good show. Talk about
Yeah.
entertainment. Wow.
Yeah.
And you're all about the wow. I was
Yeah.
just like 2 days after, I'm like, I've got to write to Grant and tell him about this wow factor thing. And then I was really behind. I kind of had some complications from my
Yeah.
surgery, so I wasn't feeling well, and I am now. But Wendy and I had been talking, and she's like, I'm going to go on and talk to Grant about this because he likes the apports.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was going to talk to Grant too. And she's like, oh, cool. So it was interesting that you interviewed her and then got hold of me and said, hey,
Yeah.
but
It was
it's
almost
just,
synchronistic because I had talked to Desta and she had been, I guess it'd be a month and a half ago,
oh
and
yeah, and I didn't know.
she got healed. She was the one that got healed. And I go, like, what's the chances? Because he only has one healing,
Hmm.
and per if that.
Yeah.
And so Desta gets healed from an incident that nobody knows about, where she got thrown out of a Jeep when she was young,
Oh my
and
gosh.
has this back injury that I've known about for years, and she doesn't really talk about it.
I never knew.
And she said it was gone. It was like her whole life she'd had this pain, and then she was going back again. He was down in the States somewhere. She's going back again because the pain is there to come back after 6 months. So
Right.
she wanted to go back again for another healing.
Yeah.
But then there's only the one healing. So I thought, what's the chances that I have Desta? She gets healed. And then I hear Wendy, and then I talk to Wendy, and suddenly she tells the same story about being healed. And it was basically the same sort of story.
Yeah.
And it was just the synchronicity of the event that just sort of, and then now I found out you were there, and then you've got more parts to the story to tell.
Yeah.
And as you're describing it, it's just it's even like even if it's being faked, it's worth the price to get of admission.
Dude,
It's
it
like,
really
wow.
is. It
It's
really
like,
is. I think about it akin to when I was 7 years old and my parents took me to Disneyland and we went to the Haunted Mansion.
yeah,
And at the time, they were using the most cutting edge technology to project holographic
yeah,
spirits
yeah,
on this ride in this cool haunted mansion. And I was in 1000% at first, but I was born psychic and seeing energy and feeling energy and all that. And so my dad was, elbowing me. He's like, "Do you see all those ghosts? What do you think? Are you scared?" I'm like, "Dad, they're not real ghosts, but they're doing a good job of it. It was
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Talk about entertainment." But this was the real deal, and there were spirits flying around. There was ectoplasm at one point came, and it just kind of like a very moist, sweet cloud came around, and I could feel it. It like brushed my face. It felt damp, kind of gooey. I can't explain it. It's ineffable to explain
yeah,
these
yeah, yeah,
things in words.
yeah.
But and there were temperature changes. I mean, and yeah, there were some things that people thought were kind of hokey, like the cabinets would sway and there'd be
Yeah,
banging on tambourines and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But Like, I don't know how the ping pong balls just suddenly all jumped off the table, went to Wendy, and then shot back across the room to the
Yeah.
table. Like, and there was no string, there's nothing. The xylophone, I don't even know how anybody could fake that. That was just so weird. But
Yeah.
then I have been with Melissa for years in her building out this space. She and her husband built this space out a year and a half ago for us to hold ceremonies in, like the ayahuasca ceremonies and our workshops and these things.
Mhm.
I know it inside and out, and I'm telling you, there is no trap door in that ceiling. There's a ceiling opened up,
Yeah.
and that little craft was up there, and it just showered down these heavy, gems into a glass bowl from probably 10, 12 feet up, maybe higher. And nothing broke. And then it closed up and it went away. I mean, and
Wow.
I'm a hypnotherapist, so I'm like, I can get people really coherent where they're all experiencing something, internally, a visual. But this was eyes open, touch it, it's physical stuff. But I just don't even know.
Yeah.
I don't even care to explain it.
Do you think there's a quickening in terms of, because physical mediumship was almost gone a couple of years
I
ago, back in the
I know.
1990s, and now
I know.
they're having a big event, I think, at this town on the East Coast there, where all the mediums
Mhm.
live and the psychics live. And I was actually going to go down to Florida to see Kai Muga, who has them come out of his eyes and all this
Right. Oh, so freaky.
and then I hear about this, and it's almost like, wow, this is almost like it's picking up the momentum here, because now Desta is training for the course, and Wendy's going to train for the course, and you've got, who's this other person that's training?
Well, Melissa, the owner of the
Melissa.
resort of Big
Okay.
Arb, has been training for about a year with them, and she's going to continue. Several of the participants there signed up or had
Wow.
already signed up. A couple came. One that I know of came from California who had already signed up to train with them. But she loves ET contact and she loves physical mediumship. She's like, I've never seen any event where they put them together, so I'm
Yeah.
here. I would probably take the course too. I just don't have time right now. But
Yeah.
some of these people are really on fire for it, and it's
Eh,
great because
eh,
like 10 years ago, 15 years ago,
yeah. You
you
didn't
were
hear
afraid
this.
to talk about your ET contact stuff out loud most of the time. You were just
Yeah.
considered silly. Now it's mainstream conversation and in the news every day, so much that you and I are kind of sick about it. We're just like,
Mhm.
done.
Yeah.
It's consciousness. I want to know who it is and what is the
Yeah.
meaning,
What's behind it? Yeah. Exactly.
uh and suddenly things like physical mediumship come back up. I hadn't even heard the word seance for years.
Yeah.
Suddenly everybody I'm talking to is talking about seances and physical mediumship.
Yeah. And you used to have something where if you had a physical medium, he could make an object appear, some little
Yes.
trinket or something like this.
Mhm.
And you mentioned, I think you said 1,800 of the small ones, 24 in the bowl, and then 200 out of his mouth. That's over 2,000 objects. I
Yes.
mean, that's just
They said they
massive.
broke a record that night.
Yeah.
They keep track.
Yeah.
His handlers keep track. But
Yeah.
between the two of them, they apported over, well, almost 2,000 objects.
Yeah.
And the stuff that he brought, that he has videos of himself apporting, like giant ring, a giant beautifully made silver ring with a jewel in the center,
Yeah.
bottles of sacred oils, ointments. God, I can't even remember some of the things that they've apported, but you know, a few years ago, you and I were together with our friends at Starworks, and you did a presentation about apports, and then you wrote your book
Yeah.
about apports. While we were there, several of us, like while we're walking down the hall or on the sidewalk, a penny drops right in front of us or a
Yeah.
dime, and we were like, "Oh gosh!"
Yeah.
Just because we're talking about it, we're tuning in, and
Yeah.
they're happening. I've been around my, I come from a very ancient, probably the most ancient yoga lineage. And, some of the great yoga masters who were my teacher's teacher's teacher would apport full plates of food for their disciples,
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
of thin air. And you think, oh, that's a nice fairy tale, for the
Yeah.
yogis to tell each other. But I've seen some stuff, Grant, and I've seen people apport like an apple to give to somebody. And
Yeah.
I still can't explain it, but I'm grateful to have seen it. I've never seen anything like this. But I do believe there is a quickening. There's a quickening across all forms of consciousness contact right
Mhm.
now for us because our world is getting ready to face its biggest change ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those beings that I channel, the star teachers continually say this. This is the timeline. This is the incarnation that it changes. But something really big and undeniable has to happen to bring us together so that we will learn to live harmoniously and work together so we can move up in the food chain and join the rest of the cosmos, basically, and not be in this little rigid, warlike, negative, controlling place. I truly feel like it's things like this and other things are just starting to find so much momentum that uh, it's getting minds to start thinking, and it's jolting people from their zombie-like state that they've been in for a while, just looking at their phone screens
Yeah.
and
That's
their
that's where
TVs.
the wow factor comes in. I remember I said to Paula, and Paula Harris she didn't agree. I said this is like a circus, and she said no, it's not. And I said yeah, it is.
Oh yeah,
It's like Jesus. If Jesus hadn't walked on water, fed 5,000 people, you never heard of the guy. He's doing the
exactly.
circus. You get people's attention with this kind of stuff. And Michael has been very good, according to Desta, that he's agreed to be interviewed and he's agreed to us doing some sort of testing in terms of
Good.
like this idea where I'll challenge people if they can. Channel is one I can say. I mean, if there's a certain type of channeling that if you can do that, there's $1,000 bet that you can't do it.
Yeah.
And same with this. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can do this, and I control the thing, and you eat your little pizza, and the apports come out dry, and your assistants aren't allowed in the room, and all the controls and the tie straps and all this kind of stuff. This is the kind of thing where it sort of is a wake up where people go like, I don't really know, but it's the consciousness is rising that people are starting to realize this kind of weird stuff is going on. And it may even apply to ufology in terms of people say, well, there's alien bodies. And I said, well, how do you know they're actually alien bodies? Did they crash or did they drop these things?
Yeah.
And if you can make a plate of food appear, can you make a being appear? Because I always remind people to go back to the alien autopsy and take a look.
Yes.
The thing has no sex organs. It
Yeah.
has no belly button. It has no nipples.
Yeah.
So is it actually a real being, or is it something that
A
if they can
facsimile.
manifest? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm encouraged, and then Desta is like I'm sure like you would be very good at it, and Desta is going to be very good at it because she's got that background of all sorts of things she's done in her life.
Same.
And I just said to her, the other experiment I wanted to do was I said, because yeah, I think whether he mentioned to you is that these things you mentioned the thing, and maybe once I finish my little rant here, you can elaborate, but you're not allowed to touch it. And he's saying that there's a portal in his mouth, and these things form in the portal, and as they're coming out, they're not really fully formed yet. So I
Right.
said to Desta, I said, Desta, when you learn to do this, remember, I'm going to be filming, and open your mouth so I can film in your
Let me
mouth,
film
because
inside your
she
mouth.
was filming him, but you couldn't really see inside his mouth. And I said, if we
Yeah.
could actually get that where you have your mouth open and you could have a camera that could actually film in the mouth and watch these things form where they're
Coming
coming
through.
from,
Yeah.
that's sort of encouraging. But he's agreed to sort of do that. But you need the permission of the spirit or
Spirit.
whatever's on the other
Yes.
side.
Yeah.
A lot of people figure we're going to have all these controlled conditions as if you're dealing with some sort of inanimate rock or something. And realize it's like Skinwalker Ranch. You think you're ahead of the thing. You set up the cameras and it happens off camera, or it rips the cables down from the camera. This thing's running the show, and you've got
It
to have
is.
some sort of agreement with the phenomena in order
Yes.
to not just perform for me when I tell you I'm running the show. No, you're not
Yeah.
running the show. It's running the show. But
Yeah.
Mychael has agreed to do this kind of stuff. So
So
talk to
great.
me about the thing about the counting. There was something about midnight, and you
Oh,
couldn't.
yes. Yeah. Well, they did warn us again, don't touch anything, even if it's, like it fell in our hair and stuff like that. Don't touch it. Just let it fall naturally because if they're not fully third dimensional physical objects for a while, they're
Yeah.
kind of between worlds for a while. They look physical, they feel physical, but don't touch them, because if you touch them before they're fully crystallized, let's say, into the third dimension, it can harm the medium, because the medium is pulling them through their ectoplasmic or their energetic bodies. They're still attached somewhat. If you touch it, you're kind of defiling or bringing down the energy, right?
Okay.
So it can harm them. It changes maybe the electromagnetic field. I don't really know how to explain it. So we just left everything as it was. And I did hear Wendy talk about that, but my take on it was they said don't touch it until the lights come on and we tell you it's okay. We want to make sure that they're fully formed. So I don't think any of us touched anything until he was finished completing the apports with the lights on where we were filming. And then, but his advice was, the ones that they gave us, you know, these and the Ashtar tool that they gave me, and then everybody got a little serving of the small ones that had rained down out of the sky. You can touch them, but if you can keep them next to your skin or near your body at midnight, until after at least a minute of midnight, then they become yours. They're part of your being. You're in relationship to them, in other words.
Okay.
It's kind of like you're in a room full of puppies and they're all fun to play with and you can pet them and hug them and everything. But until you adopt that puppy and do something formal to adopt that puppy, you can't take it home, right? That's not your puppy. It's the same as this. It's like you form a relationship with these things. And it was very close to midnight when we finished. And so he said, just hold them till a minute or two after midnight, or if you're going home, go put them under your pillow or something, but keep them close to you so that they form a relationship with you. And that's what that was about. It was about.
And what was his description? There's always this sort of debate about where apports come from. Are they being moved from someplace else where someone has lost them or forgotten them, or are they manifesting them out of consciousness or whatever? What's the interpretation you were getting from him?
He mentioned the difference between teleporting and apporting. Okay. Teleporting is when one thing disassembles its molecular structure from a physical place and reassembles it in the same way in another physical place, kind of like on Star Trek, right?
Okay.
Apports, he says, they're gifts. They come from another location. They were probably owned by someone else, but maybe they passed away or they lost them or they just didn't care about them anymore. And so anyway, they're not owned by someone, but they used to be, or they were in the purview of someone else's consciousness. They come to us from another place and physically solidify here. But there's always a purpose. There's always there's a connection between you and the person who had it before, or the being who had it before. So I found that very interesting. In my case, I guess Buddha and Krishna had these jewels, Ashtar had this other jewel. So I feel very, if I suspend all my disbelief, I feel very honored. I'm like, wow, that's some pretty high level stuff.
But those things do relate to you very much.
They do.
I mean, they don't know you, but I know you, and I would say, well, that's
it was pretty
what I would expect you would get, something like that.
He didn't really know anything about me. He's too busy. The dude, they work every day. He had just returned from Sweden. We didn't think he was even going to get to come for a while because he was in Sweden.
Wow.
And then at the last minute, he said, I can make it. I'm just coming to support my student Julie because she's so powerful and I love to watch her work. So he literally came at the last minute to be with, support her. But she's the support. I think she's like the anchor for all of this energy. I'd like to see her work more too. So I'm going to go back and look at some more videos. And I want to go see this live again. I'm hoping to goodness we can get them again for next year because it was a fantastic addition to our event.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about the future then. Maybe Desta and I can work, because Desta knows she's in contact with a lot of people who are doing this kind of stuff and trying to link up with them. The one thing, and I'm not sure who actually does it. There's one person I was talking to, this Stephanie out of Ohio, to get this person. If you've ever seen, you know what precipitation mediumship is? This is where they got the box. You take a deck of file cards, blank file cards, and you put them in a box with pencil crayons and stuff. And the box is there. You put a cover over it, and everybody sits around the box. And then they have the cards where they read your card, but they're reading your answer to your question, which is
Yeah, he does.
blind.
Yeah,
And
he does
and
that. They call it billet
and then when
readings.
this is all
Yeah.
over, the questions are all answered, then they take the cover off, the thing off the thing in the box, and everybody has a card, and it's your personal
Mm.
card, and it has something that's personal to you, and it's like wax, and it's all colored, and
Cool.
called precipitation medium. There's
Love
one
it.
guy, Lee, out of Florida, who is doing it, but apparently he's still not very that good at it. But that would be something. If we can maybe, if you want, if you're going to do an event, I would definitely come down to
Oh,
Wisconsin or in that area, and to try to get this precipitation mediumship, because if you see that, that's like
yeah. Oh,
absolutely, because everybody's sitting there and the box is right in front of everybody, and everybody saw the
yeah.
cards go in there, blank cards, and they put the crayons and stuff, and half an hour later, it's all every card has got drawings on it, and it's all
I'm
beautiful art. And
I might be mixing up two different mediums, but I'm pretty sure that Michael and or Julie do they precipitate spirit paintings too.
yeah,
In
oh
their
yeah, the paintings, yeah,
yeah.
that's the thing, is
So
that's the thing with this kind of stuff. I did one in Inspired too, where I talk about, in South America, they have these guys who do the paintings where he's painting one painting with one hand and one painting with another hand, and his eyes are closed, and he's painting, and one is some Van Gogh painting, and one some, and they look exactly like paintings,
whoa,
but he's doing
that's
two at the same time, and
crazy.
they could do it in the dark. So this is like this wow thing where
Yeah.
you just go like, how the hell did they do that? It's like, even
It,
if they're faking it, like
it's
how do you
still
do this
awesome.
in
Yeah.
the
I
dark? And
mean,
that's yeah, I would love to,
well,
maybe we can touch base with Desta
yeah.
as to the people, because she knows a lot of these people, where you get these people from, because
Hmm.
she's going down almost every weekend to some event, and
I
she
know
wants
she's
to do
so
this
turned
kind of
on.
stuff, and she's got so many books she's bought. When we were at the conference, the MUFON conference, they had used books there. I said, "So many you buy, Desta?" And she said, 20, just
Hmm.
20, just 20.
Only
And
20 this time. That's all my suitcase will
so
hold.
she's got these bookcases full of, she's very skilled at this kind of stuff, and she can,
Well, and
do the
she's a great
channeling, the
channel.
healing, and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. So
She's
that's
perfect.
why I said to her, I said, wow, because then I know there's not gonna be any fakery. If
No.
Desta's doing it, then I know. And I just said, just remember, open your mouth when the apports are coming out, so we can film. Because I thought we could get a camera that can look in the mouth, a close-up camera or
Oh,
something like that.
yeah. Yeah.
And if you get permission of the spirits, and it sounds like we may be able to get
It-
permission of the spirits to do this kind of stuff, because otherwise they're not
no,
gonna do
I
it. I mean, if
believe
you're
they
challenging
will.
them,
Just
yeah,
like now, I hate to bring it back into the subject because you're just kind of done with it, but I'm still not. It's just part of the big wheel of modalities. But ET contact, that a few years ago, if you got a little bit of footage and put it out there of something in the sky or on the
yeah, yeah,
ground, that was something. At least 40 times a day,
yeah,
every day, I have people sending me their footage.
yeah,
And now it's just like an avalanche. Well, you started that orb group, and now look how big that group is. And every
yeah,
single day they're posting videos of orbs
yeah,
or other
yeah,
things. So something is afoot.
yeah.
And
It's accelerating, and you can even see the synchronicities. I just
yes,
had an interview with Jeffrey Mishlove, and I forgot to
oh,
mention it, because
love
he was
it.
interviewing yesterday. He was interviewing Bob Bigelow live again. And Bob Bigelow, the orb thing is something that people were always, oh, this is garbage, it's
Oh, I
dust, it's
know.
whatever. And then
No.
Bob Bigelow goes on Jeffrey Mishlove, and he said, oh yeah, we were doing orbs, and they
Yeah.
were talking about this, the guards, where the guards were told to walk around with the dogs. And if the dog
Hmm.
went into a surrender position, or they felt something cold or felt something weird, they were
Hmm.
immediately to stop and take out the digital camera and start filming. And these
Yes.
orbs would come up. And
Yeah.
Bob said he could control the orbs. He could tell how many orbs would be on the
Yeah.
photographs. Talked about the orb where the guy got healed inside the orb, and he's got this photograph. And you see that where Bob Bigelow backs up the fact, yeah, this is all for real. And so
Yeah.
it's almost like this thing of, it goes slowly, it accelerates, but it's not like we need it today. It's the process that we're learning from this,
It
and
is.
so many
It's the
funerals,
journey.
and everybody will know what it is. Everybody will know what an orb is. Everybody will know what a physical medium is, and
Very soon.
it's just us to tell these stories. And
Yeah.
it's so weird that people will look at it and they can be skeptical all they want. The young people will look at it and say, that's pretty cool, and basically accept the idea that, yeah, this stuff probably is happening.
Yeah, and then they'll take the ball and run with it. No, I saw that first interview with Bigelow and Dr. Mishlove, and I was just so impressed because you get somebody like Bob Bigelow talking about these orbs,
Yeah,
and somebody as brilliant as Dr. Mishlove, and these are two great minds on our planet, and they're
yeah,
talking about stuff that a few years ago you didn't dare talk about in public because you
yeah,
would lose your career,
yeah,
you would be
yeah.
gone.
And
So,
yet Bob knew about this years ago.
oh
People
yeah,
don't realize that 30 years
no,
ago, he gave $4.7 million to the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, for consciousness studies.
I
He
know.
knew
He's
long before.
always been on the cutting edge,
He's on the cutting edge.
always on the
And so
cutting
whatever
edge.
you think about him and his business or whatever, his ties or whatever, you got to listen, because this guy knows a thing or two that you and I don't know.
I wish I could just sit with him for days and days and days and speak to him, but
Yeah,
but he's
he's
like our
getting
friend
more
Chris.
open now.
It's just
Yeah,
like Chris Bledsoe.
yeah,
You go from the other end where this was a successful businessman,
yeah,
but very humble, out kind of in remote area. Nobody really knew him other than his business, and suddenly he has all this stuff happening. And for years, people made fun of him. Nobody
yeah,
paid
yeah.
attention to him other than make fun of him. Now, thank goodness, he's starting to get his just desserts because
Yeah,
people are like, this man is very tied into this phenomenon.
yeah,
And he's so humble and so good. And that's what we need. We need leaders in our world who are good and honest and full of integrity and yet who are, and it's proving that's who they want to talk to. They want to work with people who are good people who want to help the world.
yeah,
You notice they're not working with,
yeah,
the
yeah.
folks who are trying, as one of my friends says, the powers who want to stay in power.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where you feel like gratitude meditation every day that you and I got to play this game. I mean, we could have
Yes.
been, untouchables in the streets of Calcutta in the junkyard looking for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. We didn't. We got to play in this game, this
Yeah.
amazing game at the leading edge of just amazing stuff that we see and hear about and stuff. And just, you got to feel gratitude every day that we got to play this game.
Every single moment of every day. It is, and it's one of the things I try to teach my students and advise my clients for, and anybody who'll listen. Gratitude, unconditional love, forgiveness, peace, being of service to others. These are the things that are going to raise our collective consciousness up. This is how we change the world. You don't change the world by fighting all
Yeah,
these guys. You
yeah,
change the world by being better yourself. You start at ground zero here in yourself, then in your home, then in your neighborhood, then in your community, and it grows.
yeah,
So I'm extremely grateful. I'm extremely grateful that you and I met years
yeah.
ago and we have worked together, and it's just been so fun to watch. I love you because you're so curious. You go after everything and you really hold on to it and you dig and everything that I get to reap the benefits by reading the
Yeah,
books and watching
yeah,
the videos and having
yeah,
conversations. But dang,
yeah.
wow, what a
It's
life.
exciting. Let's go to the future. So you figure there may be another event in Wisconsin, and
Oh yeah.
maybe give your details of
Okay.
of your sites and your
Okay.
contacts, so that people can maybe
Sure.
keep up, and if you're going to post something,
Yeah.
whether people can come, or is this, because a lot of seances, I remember I wanted to go see Kai Muga and another guy by the name of David Thompson, and David Thompson is very particular, and they said, well, we got to get permission to get you in,
Right.
like,
Some of
because they're
these are
always afraid of
vetted. Yeah.
of people coming in with negative energy or
Right.
skeptic, or they're going to touch something or not do what they're told or whatever. And I
Mhm.
never did get permission to go see David. And
Aw.
he's the guy that brings in, I think he brings in Louis Armstrong. And I said, man,
Oh,
you know, my
cool.
favorite song, if I ever had you know, something when I leave, is a Wonderful Life.
Wonderful
It's a lot
life.
wonderful
Yeah.
world. Yeah,
Wonderful
Wonderful
world.
World by Louis
Yeah.
Armstrong. And if you could be in a seance where Louis Armstrong comes in, or the one where they describe where John Lennon comes in. And I
Yes.
remember talking to Walter, if you know who Walter is, and I said, "Are you sure? Are you sure?" And it was him, and he said he was standing on my wife's foot. I know he was there.
That is so cool.
Those kind of things, and that's that. You know, I was ready to travel the world to see this kind of
Me
stuff
too.
because it's so you know, it's sort of fulfilling that it gives you more energy yourself to promote this kind of stuff, because you always have that
Yeah,
hesitation about, well, you know, and
I
that kind of
know.
stuff. So
No, if you're supposed to be helping the cause, the mission, you get pushed pretty hard.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
you don't get a get out of jail card free,
yeah.
whatever, you
Which
know.
gives me, you can tell your stuff, but this behind me is actually how I got to do the apport thing, where I was talking to Ray Hernandez, and he told me about the port, and his main guy was Alberto, and Alberto had these
Yes.
swords falling out of his hand. I said, "What? You got
Yeah.
swords falling out?" I was
Crazy
like, "Come
story.
on!" And he told me this whole story, and then I started to check, and that's when I discovered that Jeffrey Mishlove had done an interview with um, Stanley Krippner, who was
Oh,
the big
yes.
parapsychologist from
Oh,
years ago
yes.
with the dream stuff, and that he was doing apports, and these are ports that Stanley Krippner got from a psychic.
Oh,
So apports
cool.
go across the, like, ghosts, psychics,
Yeah.
UFO experiencers, physical mediums, all this kind of stuff. It's across the spectrum. And so this was a medium out of or a psychic out of Brazil. And Stanley Krippner told the story that he had all these stuff, and he was taking his students down, and they were testing these apports, and 1 to 5 how important they were, and the symbols compared to who got the you know, how they
Yeah.
fit in and stuff like that. And then he said that he had all these apports in his house, and somebody broke in the house and stole them all. So he said, well, in order to protect the next set that he had, and this is part of the next set, he said, I sent them to a university in Canada, to the University of Manitoba. And I went, like, what's the
Oh,
chances?
oh,
I was there
yeah.
40 years
I
that
know.
there's an
That's
apport
where you
collection at
worked.
my university.
What the
I couldn't wait
hell?
to get home to go and look at this thing. So you see those kind of synchronicities where you realize
Yes.
that you're being pushed into this thing, and that this is
Yes.
a story you got to tell. So I appreciate your telling your story, but let's go through the contacts and what you
Yeah.
think may be happening in terms of events that you've got coming up, or that you think are
Okay.
like this, that people might want to see, because they may get excited by this interview and say, boy, I'd like to see that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so we got to give them maybe some hope that they can go somewhere and see something.
Absolutely. Well, at least once a year. Now, last year we had 4 or 5 retreats up there, but it got to be a lot because some of these, like Melissa and Kimberly, they're mothers and they're working mothers. They
Yeah.
have kids. I'm a little bit more free, but I live further away. But at least once a year we do one of these big retreats. And after this year, we're just like, seriously, 2 days after we got back, Melissa waited 2 days because I wasn't feeling well because of my surgery.
Yeah.
But 2 days later, she was like, okay, we got to come up with the date. What's a good
Wow.
date for you? What do you want to have? Who do you want to have? Who do you want to invite? Blah, 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 blah. And so forgive me, I think the first day is Labor Day weekend, like September the 4th or the 2nd or
Okay.
something of next year. But
Okay.
if you're not already a member of our Big Arb retreat page, I'll invite you and Desta.
they have a Facebook site?
Yeah, we have a Facebook page.
So it's
It's
called what? Big R.
Big Arb Contact Gathering or something like that. That's what we originally named it. But we'll invite you to that. I think Melissa has invited you to come before, but you never could get there, or it just wasn't on your radar.
Okay.
But I'll invite you to the site, you and Desta, and
Yeah.
you can kind of
Yeah.
go back and look at some of the stuff. But for people who want to know more about this, we have because part of the stuff we did last year was, bringing shamans up to do ayahuasca ceremonies and things like that on top of this other work. We had to legally do that. We had to start a church. And so the name of the church is Cosmic Tree of Life. So people can go to cosmictreeoflife.com and get on the webpage, and they can see what we've done before and what's coming up. It may not be updated yet for next year, but they can get on there and get on the mailing list and say, hey, I'm interested in any upcoming events, and they'll do that. They can also go to, they can look up McGrath's, McGrath, McGrath's Big R, BIGARB resort, and get on that webpage just to see what it looks like. It's a gorgeous, you know, on a lake in the big woods, way up north, you know, log cabin, like really nice log cabins and all kinds of cool stuff. But if people want to get a hold of me and I can steer them anywhere or answer questions for them, it's just debzshakti.com, debzshakti.com. In fact, it's right there. I don't know if it shows up on your screen, but that's what it shows on my screen as my name.
Yeah.
My website is debzshakti.com. All my social media pages are Debz Shakti. So, or Debz Shakti official. I'm on almost all of them. I mean, there are probably 500 social medias now, but you know, the main ones. I'm on, you know, Twitter, Insta, TikTok, Facebook, all of that. And so through any of those, you can contact me, and I'm happy to direct you to the right person to answer questions about this or to hook you up. And we will get you on our mailing list and, you know, make sure that you know when things are going to come up, and invite you. Now, because there is limited space, now it's getting big. So, you know, we still have to have room for everybody. But we do at least, usually it's Melissa who has a quick little initial contact phone call with people or a little Zoom with people who attend our stuff to make sure that they're, that they will not have a lot of fear, you know, fear or negative feelings or whatever can often bring down the energy of the group. We're all about fostering a heart coherence in the group so that we can have these great experiences. Not to say that it's that there's any prejudice or any discrimination, but sometimes you know when somebody's not quite ready or might not be a good fit. So we're pretty honest with them, but it rarely happens. But yeah, it's not by invitation only. It's open to the public, but we like to get to know you first to make sure that you'll enjoy being with the other members of the group. So
send me the links and I'll put them in the description so people can go there.
Will.
And and then you mentioned now you mentioned something else because I do the psychedelic books as well.
Yes.
So did you have an experience with ayahuasca? I mean, did you have a?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
Well, we'll have to do another interview. We'll do another interview.
That's for another day. And I have been having relationships with the mushrooms as well, psilocybin, and I am on the waiting list to be to take the certification courses through Johns Hopkins to be a trip facilitator. But there's a long waiting list, and so what I'm doing now is I'm taking a lot of extra coursework. I'm always going to school, but I'm getting I'm focusing on neuroscience, neurobiology, I can't ever say the word entheobiology.
Yeah, I would have been able to say it good, but
yeah, you know, when we're talking about the plant medicines, the plant teachers, and so forth, and I'm very excited about it, but it's something that we may reintroduce. By the way, at this last one that we did a plant teacher ceremony, but it was with the sacred cacao. We had a real cacao ceremony. Wow. Like not just everybody sitting around drinking hot chocolate. We merged with the cacao teacher, which we got from one of our teachers from Guatemala. And then the night before, when I flew in, I spent 2 or 3 hours bringing it through to in the form that would be consumed. I prayed over it. I sang to it. I
Yeah.
did all the rituals. It was sanctified, and then we held a full-blown ceremony. Sadly, because most people don't allow you to film ceremonies, we didn't film it.
Yeah.
Next year, we're filming it because
Wow.
you think about cacao as being some sort of benign, you're drinking
Yeah.
a chocolate drink.
Yeah.
Holy cow, there was healing. It opened everyone's hearts. We did it the very first thing. It was our opening ceremony for the event, and people's hearts just came together in a way that I have never seen any of our gatherings happen. And these are from very diverse populations and educational backgrounds and jobs, and it was just incredible. So to even be able to do that with just something so simple as cacao,
Uh-huh.
it tells me that we're really being led to bring in all the spokes. As Ray Hernandez is the one who
Yeah.
coined that term, the
Yeah.
spokes of the modality wheels.
Modalities. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're talking to Jimmy Blanchette about maybe coming
Okay.
to do the radio contact modality, because it's gone way beyond
Yeah.
talking to ETs, as you know. It's
Yeah.
talking
Yeah.
about the nature of the universe and
Yeah.
all of that. Um, we never know. We're still up in the air about who we want to and where we want to go with this, but we definitely want to have the physical
So,
mediumship
so
back.
if I flew in, where would I fly into? You said you flew in there.
Yeah, there is a community airport close by. It's about 25 minutes away, called Rhinelander, but you still have to go to a major airport and catch a puddle jumper to Rhinelander. I flew into Rhinelander this time, but I usually fly into Green Bay
Okay.
or Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then drive. It's about a 3-hour drive from either of those, depending on which way you come. And then you have your rental car with you, and it's a beautiful drive through woods
Yeah.
and Crystal Lakes. But the closest airport is Rhinelander, and it's I think they only have 2 flights coming in a day and going out, so
Yeah.
it's a little bit harder to do. But no, if you
Wow.
if you come, I actually like flying into Green Bay better than anything. It's easy. It's a really small airport given the
Well, if you
size of
say
the
it's 3 hours
city.
into Minneapolis, that would make it 11 hours from here, which is not bad. Plus, I can probably go cross country, which would make it even less.
Yeah, you could go
Come
probably
through
across what is that, the Mackinac
the
Bridge or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah, I'm
you're
excited by this. I didn't know they had this event. You may have sent me the event, but I didn't catch on. I mean, because
yeah.
Desta mentioned a number of the events that she goes to, and I'm sure she'll show up, and
Oh, I would love it
it
so
would be
much.
just and if you can get some updates to me as to these people who are being trained, and because it sounds like a lot of people are being trained.
All
So
of a
I'd like
sudden,
to
everybody
hear if
wants to get trained.
if there's people having success from the
Yeah.
training and being able to do stuff. I would be very interested in following up on that.
Melissa is having tremendous success. She built her own cabinet
Yeah.
several months ago. Uh, there's a whole other story that went on here where several of us have crystal skulls, and they got linked to the Mitchell Hedges skull, including Melissa's brand new crystal skull that weekend got linked to Mitchell Hedges. And after the event was over, she took her skull into her cabinet to meditate and to practice, and manifested ectoplasm, and all kinds of crazy stuff has been happening ever since. So
Wow.
her abilities got exponentially ramped up after this particular gathering. Whereas she would just go in her, she's a very humble person. She's like, I'm sure I'll never be able to do this, but I'm so interested. So it's a nice place for me to go in and meditate away from my kids and blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. Suddenly now, she's been taking this class for about a year. Suddenly, all of a sudden, she's having big manifestations happening. So I don't know where that's going. It's really incredible.
Wow. This sounds
But
exciting.
yeah,
This
we'd love to
maybe
have you.
the synchronicity of all this is coming together, that I'll follow up on all these leads, and maybe we can do another book out of this, or we can have sort of a circuit where people know where they can go, because
Yeah.
I've never been to a seance, and I'm sure a lot of people will now be more inspired by this and say, well, I'd like to check this out. And
I
so
sure hope
this may
so.
be an opportunity for people to get it, and then you get more people, and it raises the zeitgeist and the consciousness, and
Exactly.
that's what it's all about. So
Maybe we'll have more than one next year because people are really starting to get excited about this stuff, you
yeah,
know.
so
And
let's
our
be in touch
main,
with
yeah.
Desta, and let's see where it goes. I mean,
All right.
I'm pretty excited. So
And
thank you for this, and send me the
thank you.
links, and I'll put them in there.
I
And
will.
will people will be able to see the interview I did with Wendy and with you. And if that doesn't convince them to go and check this thing out, I mean,
I
it's
can
at
send
least
you a
as
few more of the names that you may want to interview. Just,
beautiful.
it would be so cool to have to hear everybody's perspective,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
But
yeah. I would love to do that, because that's yours is a lot of detail that I didn't hear that
mhm.
Wendy was talking about. So you saw it from a different perspective, and it
Yeah.
turned out well.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Grant. I
Well,
appreciate you so much. You're so great.
namaste. I really
Namaste.
appreciate having met you, and we're on. We are the, as they say, we are the ones we've been waiting for. So thank you very much
Yes, we are.
for being there, and for enlightening me, and all the stuff you've done for me. And
Oh,
best of luck with your hip, and
thank you.
hopefully you get to go to the cabinet next time and get healed
Hopefully I'll be completely healed before we go to the
before you get
cabinet.
there. Yeah.
I want to like do something better than my physical self with this
Yeah.
work. So
Yeah.
I'm cool.
You'd be good if you ever take the course. You'd be good at it. I
Oh,
mean,
I'd love it. I'd
and
love it.
where are you, in Wisconsin? I'm not, you're
No,
saying it
I'm in
was,
Kansas City. Remember, I live straight
oh, you're
down
in
from
Kansas
you.
City? I
Yeah,
didn't
I
know
live
that.
straight down from
Oh, you're
you.
12 hours from me. I used to drive to Kansas City to
Yeah.
go to Eureka Springs. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
in
So
Kansas City on the Missouri side or the Kansas
Missouri,
side?
Missouri.
Oh,
So
so you're by the Truman Library. I used to go to Truman
I
Library.
actually live just a few miles away from the Truman Library.
Yeah, I used to go there all. Well, in
Yeah.
fact, I'd go through there to go to Ozark
Yeah.
and to go to the library. So I'm
Yeah.
familiar. Maybe I'll have to stop in and see it if I go by there
Oh, I would
sometime.
love it. Well, and maybe I'll go down to the Ozark thing this next spring. I haven't been for years and years, but if you
Yeah,
go, yeah, I'm gonna go.
yeah,
That'd be fun.
that's an exciting place, because it's one of these things where even if the conference isn't the greatest, I mean, it's a beautiful
Oh,
place. I mean,
Eureka
just
Springs is
unbelievable.
one of my favorite places.
Yeah,
There's definitely an energy vortex there
yeah,
too. But
yeah.
yeah, and actually, I think next year I will probably drive to Big Arb for our
Okay.
events, just because to get there from here, it's usually a 10 to 12 hour travel day because you have to stop
Hmm.
and change planes at least one time. There's no direct flight.
Yeah.
And then you have to drive, or you go to the little place and then you have to drive. So I'm like, and I like to bring all my toys with
Oh,
me,
yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
know?
yeah. Yeah.
So, like, okay, I think why not just drive it, have my own car? It's the same travel day. It's just, I'm not passive. I'm just going to be driving instead of sitting in an airport for a long time.
Yeah. And it's pretty easy driving, in terms of, it's not like driving in New York or
Oh gosh,
Los
no.
Angeles. It's like beautiful, you know,
Beautiful drive.
interstates that wonderful. I enjoy even Kansas City, because for me, Kansas City, you just point south, and there's no
There
turns.
you
You go
go.
straight
Nope,
all
you
the
go
way down.
straight down.
Down 29,
Absolutely.
and there you go in there. And then when you get to Kansas City, then you get lots of traffic. But until then, it's like,
Yeah.
you have a hard time staying awake. It's like just, you know, straight
Yeah.
drive.
You get into trance. Well, anytime
Yeah.
you go that way, let me
Yeah.
know. You are
Beautiful.
absolutely welcome here at any
Beautiful.
time.
Beautiful.
And then maybe I'll confab with you and we'll go on down.
Yeah.
But
And
anyway,
definitely I'm planning to come to this next year. I'm already going for November, and then if they get this precipitation medium thing, I would I hear
oh
these
my
stories about this.
God.
I even had a little box. I had it up on a counter. I put my little pencils in there and my little the things, and left it there for about 6 months or something, and nothing happened. I'm going, oh, just
I
weird.
I would
Oh,
not rule anything out, Grant.
yeah.
What I thought was, well, I just think everything's possible. I think if you think it, you've already manifested it on some layer, and now it's just bringing your perceptive
Yeah.
abilities to that frequency. But I have no doubt that you could do all this stuff. You got
Yeah,
it in you,
but
you
I
know?
think my job is not to, like, even with the UFO sightings when I went to Mount Shasta,
Yeah,
this thing happened, and I figured they were going to have a being in a portal, and the portal didn't open. And then the message to me was, Grant doesn't need to see; he already knows. So
right.
I'm never part of the the sort of the
You're to
circus
get the
thing. I'm
word
sort of the
out.
I'm to get the word out. Yeah. And that was with the Mission Rama thing was I immediately knew that this was a Latino thing and nobody knew about them because it was all in Spanish.
Yes.
And it was my role to bring this to the English speaking world to tell people, do you know about this group? These people open these things and these aliens are in them. It's like
And
just
it's been going on for decades and decades and
and nobody knew.
decades.
And that's the thing. So we all have our roles, if especially if you
Yes.
believe the reincarnation thing that we come here
Yes.
as I was talking to Jeffrey Mishlove, it's the idea is it's why did I come into the world?
Yes.
And when I leave, they're going to ask you how did it work out because you planned it. And did you,
Mm.
and so you got to figure out what am I here for? And am I doing what I'm supposed to be here for? And that's
Yeah,
all you got to worry about. Don't worry about anybody else.
that's
And
right.
what's our role? And I think for you and I, it's pretty obvious that it's this weird stuff and telling the stories and raising consciousness and an exciting life that we get to lead. So thank you
Yeah.
for being part of it with me.
No, thank you, Grant. I appreciate you so much and consider you my one of my chosen brothers, and I'm
Yeah.
just honored to get to do the work with you. So thanks
Okay.
for having me on, and I will send you some links and we can steer people to this stuff, but I sure hope you join us next year for at
Oh,
least
I
one of
absolutely.
these.
And if you got anybody else that we think we should talk to
Yeah.
about any of it and you know what they've seen or the we still have to you and I have to do one on ayahuasca and we
Yes.
have to do one on the mushrooms because I just had a pretty dramatic experience 3 weeks ago. I guess it'd be
Oh,
three
you
weeks ago. Yeah.
did?
Yeah, I've done
Ah,
26 sessions, but this was the most
because the
powerful
last
after my mother died. It was
yeah, I had no idea you had done any since, you
yeah,
stopped for a while, and that's,
yeah.
I thought you weren't going to do it again,
Yeah, I was warned not to do it again by Kay Randall May, the medical intuitive.
right? You're to
She
it,
somehow
yeah.
picked up that I've been doing it and said not, but I was in such a state after my mother died that I figured nope. And it was kind of weird. My mother
Oh,
actually appeared and
oh,
it
Grant.
was so we have to talk about
I
that
know,
and
I
because
can't wait to
because I
talk
think
about
that's
that.
another important thing. I think that's something that will change the world because it
I do too.
basically there's so much money being thrown at psychedelics now for
I
the
know.
training and stuff because people it's
Mm,
like UFOs there's nobody can make any money at it but
no.
in psychedelics with all you need the guides and all this stuff and people are
Hmm.
there's a lot of money involved so you have everybody trying to patent everything that moves
I
in the
know.
psychedelic world and meanwhile people are doing the experiments the first second the third stage experiments and all these stories are coming out about the fact that there's another world out there
Yeah.
so indirectly that is I think one of the things that's going to change the world and I've got a new book coming out called The Gifts where I talk about how LSD was discovered and the,
Yes.
the idea was discovered at the same time as we discovered nuclear power
Yeah.
and
Go figure that.
the fact that this changed the
It's kind
world
of that
absolutely people don't
buffer.
realize yeah yeah
Yeah, the
balanced it out
counterpoint
yeah
to that.
yeah
There's always a balance. And
yeah
I have no doubt that's why it came through about that time. I mean,
yeah
Watson went down and met with Maria Sabina, who had been, it was a silent culture, a sacred, almost secret culture, all
yeah
those hundreds, thousands of years till that
yeah
happened,
yeah
right at the time when we had nuclear
yeah
power.
and the guy had 20 I think 25,000 drugs he had tested for whatever he was testing them for or whatever and it was the only drug out of 25,000 he retested 5 years after he tested it he said I should go back and do that one again and then accidentally got it on his finger and
Yes.
accidentally got in his mouth and he didn't know what's going on
Then he rides
and
his little bike
but
home
yeah.
and he's like,
When you look at the
oh, wow.
story it's just
Yeah,
it's
that's a
kind of,
great
kind of bizarre where
story.
you go like wow that didn't happen but anything well you and I realize that the synchronicity thing that if you pay attention, you realize like, no,
It's
you're getting
all
help.
on
You're getting
purpose.
directed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all on purpose. And it's about a timing thing. Like, you may not have been interested in this
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
gotten into any of them, even though you were interested, until your energy is in the right place and it's the
Yeah.
right timing for you to put that information to use. So I definitely think we're being guided. I definitely think we're being used, and I'm all about it. I'm like, that's my prayer every morning. Just
Yeah.
use me to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
Help
Exactly.
me,
Yeah.
support me. I'm fine. I'll do whatever, for the betterment of creation, basically, not just humanity, but for creation.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's the way it works. And it does work when people follow that, where you get the ego out of the way and open yourself up and it happens. Just what happened here, where you know, I had done physical mediumship, and then suddenly Desta said, "Oh, there's, you know, she was down, and she's going to this event and that event and this medium and that medium," and then suddenly, then Wendy says she's gone to the same medium, and she tells this healing story, and then I hear that you're there, and these people from Winnipeg are there, and I'm going like, "Wow,
You're like,
this is
who's standing above me with this big rubber bat?
yeah, just
Wake up,
just
wake up.
the
This
next
is
one,
your sign.
direction is
Yeah.
sending you there, and it all falls together, and pieces all fall together, and you know this is where you got to go, and it's just follow it
It's
and
awesome.
don't fight it.
Follow your heart. So
Beautiful.
Grant,
Thank you
thank
again.
you. I'll send you all that stuff so that you can put it
Beautiful.
into the description and also make your contacts as well. So
Beautiful.
thank you.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Have a
Much
good
love.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.